The two security officers stormed into the Pine Haven International Airport pilot lounge, their heavy boots thudding against the polished floor. Both men wore dark gray uniforms, their badges gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Captain Madeline Brooks pointed sharply at Marcus Reynolds, her voice cold and loud enough for everyone to hear. "That's him! Remove him immediately. He's trespassing in a restricted area with fake credentials. This is a major security breach." Marcus felt his throat tighten, his legs trembling as the taller officer approached. "Son, step aside and hand over that badge," the man ordered gruffly, glancing briefly at Madeline before focusing his hard eyes on Marcus. "Now." I didn't do anything wrong, sir," Marcus stammered, struggling to steady his voice. "I'm part of Reynolds Aviation's career exploration program. Miss Vanessa Reynolds from HR brought me here. Please call her. She can explain." The officers exchanged a look but made no move to verify his claim. Instead, the second man reached for his radio. "Possible intruder. Suspected use of falsified ID. Awaiting orders." A few pilots gathered near the door, whispering among themselves. Some crossed their arms, others shook their heads. Marcus could feel their stares like daggers. He had dreamed of this moment, standing where real pilots stood, but not like this, not reduced to a suspect because of the color of his skin. Madeline's lips curled into a cruel smile as she watched Marcus shrink under the growing tension. "That's what they do," she sneered. "Pretend it's all a misunderstanding, try to talk their way out. Meanwhile, they're gathering intel. Industrial espionage, plain and simple." The crowd murmured louder now, feeding off her words. Marcus clenched his fists, the pain grounding him as he forced himself not to cry. "Please," he managed, "just let me call my dad. He'll clear this up." Madeline chuckled darkly. "Your dad?" she mocked. "I'm sure he's a janitor here, huh? Probably the one who snuck you in." That was the breaking point. Marcus's eyes flashed with anger, but before he could speak, the taller officer grabbed his arm roughly. "Come on, kid. We'll sort this out somewhere else." Marcus's heart pounded against his chest like a drum. As they dragged him toward the door, he knew with every agonizing step, his dream of flying was crumbling. The taller officer closed in, his eyes sharp as blades, while the second flanked Marcus Reynolds, ensuring there was no escape. Captain Madeline Brooks pointed at Marcus like he was a criminal, her voice laced with disdain. "That's him. I want you to take him out of here and conduct a full search. This is no accident. He knew exactly what he was doing." The older officer, likely in his 50s with graying hair and a deep frown, studied Marcus from head to toe. "Young man," he said firmly, "you need to come with us. We need to verify your identity and get to the bottom of this." Marcus instinctively took a step back, fear flooding his chest. He struggled to keep his voice steady, but it cracked under the weight of the moment. "Sir, please, I was really allowed to be here. I'm part of Reynolds Aviation's career program. Miss Vanessa Reynolds from HR, she brought me here. Just call her. I'm not lying." Before he could finish, Madeline cut in sharply, her words slicing through the air. "I've heard enough. He's violating a restricted zone with a fake ID. I won't waste another minute. Flight safety is at stake, and I won't allow some kid's lies to jeopardize it." Marcus's knees weakened. The world around him blurred, spinning out of control. A cold sweat broke across his forehead as the reality of his situation sank in. No one spoke up for him. Not a soul in that room dared to question the powerful captain. Summoning every ounce of courage, Marcus reached into his pocket with trembling hands and pulled out his phone. "Please, let me call my dad. He can explain everything." Madeline crossed her arms and smirked. "Go ahead. Call him. I'm sure your father's scrubbing toilets somewhere in this airport. When this is over, both of you will be banned from ever setting foot here again." The silence that followed was suffocating. No one protested. Marcus's hands shook as he dialed. The ringtone echoed through the lounge like a cruel countdown, each ring stabbing deeper into his chest. As the call rang, Marcus's mind drifted back to better days. His 6th birthday at Pine Haven International, standing under a massive aircraft with his father, Thomas Reynolds. That memory gave him just enough strength to hold on, for now. Marcus Reynolds felt his back press against the cold wall as the tall officer loomed over him, his voice as firm as steel. "If you refuse to cooperate, young man, we'll treat it as resisting law enforcement," he warned, his tone leaving no room for argument. Marcus could hardly breathe, his heart pounding so loudly it drowned out the murmur surrounding him. From the corner of his eye, he saw airport staff whispering, some pulling out their phones, recording the unfolding scene like it was some spectacle instead of a teenager's worst nightmare. Captain Madeline Brooks stood tall, arms crossed, her eyes gleaming with satisfaction, as if she had just uncovered a terrorist plot. "See," she sneered, "that's how these infiltrators work. Quiet, innocent looking, until they get what they're after. If we hadn't caught him now, who knows what could have happened?" Her words stung deeper than any slap. Marcus couldn't even speak. Every justification felt useless against her venom. He clutched his badge tightly, praying someone, anyone, would stand up for him. But the silence was deafening. No Miss Vanessa Reynolds, no sympathetic voice, only eyes filled with suspicion and judgment. Desperate, Marcus swallowed hard, his voice trembling. "Please, I need to call my dad. He's Thomas Reynolds. He works for Reynolds Aviation. He'll explain everything." Madeline scoffed loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Oh, your dad? What's he gonna do, kid? Clean the floor faster so you can escape this mess?" Her laughter, cruel and sharp, echoed across the lounge. "Go ahead, call him. Let's see how far that gets you." Marcus's trembling fingers struggled to unlock his phone. Each second felt like a lifetime. He dialed with shaking hands, the ringtone piercing through the heavy air. 1 ring, 2, 3. With every unanswered call, Marcus felt himself sinking deeper into the abyss of hopelessness. But as the 4th ring echoed, a memory flashed. His father lifting him into the cockpit of a gleaming jet, his voice firm and proud. "You belong up here, son. Never forget that." That memory gave Marcus just enough strength to stay on his feet. "I'm not a criminal," Marcus whispered to no one in particular, but it was the only truth he had left as the world closed in. Captain Madeline Brooks smirked cruelly, her arms crossed as she stared Marcus Reynolds down. "So you had to call Daddy after all, huh?" Her voice was loud, dripping with condescension. "Typical. You should have known your place the moment you stepped foot in here." The words sliced through the air like a razor, drawing a fresh wave of humiliation over Marcus. His throat tightened, but he held on, his father's voice still ringing in his ear. "Stay calm, son. I'm on my way." It was the only lifeline Marcus had now. The tall security officer, still suspicious, sneered. "Crying won't help you, kid. You know what happens when folks like you start sneaking around restricted areas? People lose jobs. Or worse." Marcus swallowed hard, his vision blurry with tears he refused to let fall. He could feel the weight of every eye in the room, judging, watching, waiting to see him fall apart. His fists clenched so tightly his knuckles turned white, but he refused to break. He'd come too far, worked too hard to have it all shattered by one woman's prejudice. The officer's radio crackled. "Unit 7, what's your status?" a gruff voice called. "Suspect detained in the pilot's lounge," the officer replied flatly, his eyes never leaving Marcus. "Possible security breach. Awaiting further orders." Madeline's smug grin widened. "There it is, official now," she sneered. "Bet your dad can't fix that with a phone call." Just then the sound of hurried footsteps echoed down the corridor. Heads turned as a tall, sharply dressed black man appeared. His suit immaculate, his expression carved from stone. Thomas Reynolds, Marcus's father, owner of Reynolds Aviation, strode into the lounge like he owned it. The room fell silent. Thomas's voice was calm, but the power behind it was undeniable. "My son called me. I suggest someone here explains why a child invited by this program is being treated like a criminal." Madeline's smirk faltered, her face paling slightly. Thomas's piercing gaze swept the room. "If you think this ends here, you're wrong. This is going public." For the first time, Marcus felt a flicker of hope. His father was here, and the nightmare might finally be over. The moment Marcus Reynolds heard his father's steady voice, every wall he'd tried to build inside himself crumbled. "Dad, they're accusing me of being a spy," Marcus choked out, his voice breaking as he struggled to stay composed. "They're saying you and Mom are janitors, that I snuck in here to steal secrets. I don't know what to do." There was a long pause on the other end. Then Thomas Reynolds' voice came low, firm, and full of restrained fury. "Stay where you are, son. I'm already inside the terminal. I'll be there in less than 5 minutes. No one hurts my family." Marcus's legs nearly gave out from the rush of relief. For the first time since this nightmare began, he felt hope flicker. But Captain Madeline Brooks wasn't done. She stepped forward, voice booming so everyone could hear. "Oh, calling Daddy again?" she sneered. "I wonder how long he's worked in maintenance here. Bet it's hard for him to answer while pushing a mop." The cruel laughter that rippled through the gathered staff hit Marcus like a punch to the gut. His fists clenched, nails digging into his palms as he bit down on his trembling lip. But he said nothing. He knew his father would make this right. Madeline crossed her arms, savoring her moment of power. "Security, escort him outside. I don't care who's coming. This boy doesn't belong here." He could have planted something already. The security officer hesitated, glancing between Marcus and Madeline. Just as he reached out, the heavy glass door slammed open with a loud crack. Thomas Reynolds stormed in, tall, imposing, his tailored suit immaculate. "Step away from my son," he commanded, his voice sharp as steel. The room fell into stunned silence. Thomas's eyes burned into Madeline. "Do you even know who you're humiliating right now? I'm Thomas Reynolds, owner of Reynolds Aviation, and a board member of this airport." Madeline's face turned ghost white. Thomas's voice lowered, dangerous now. "You publicly accused my son of espionage. You insulted my family. Do you know the legal consequences of what you've just done?" Madeline opened her mouth, but no sound came. Thomas took one step closer. "This ends now, or I'll bury this airline and everyone involved." Marcus exhaled shakily. For the first time, he felt truly safe. Eyes. Thomas Reynolds, owner of Reynolds Aviation and senior FAA board member, strode forward with purpose, his gaze cold as steel, landing squarely on Captain Madeline Brooks. "Which one of you," he began, his voice calm but laced with authority, "accused my son of being a spy?" Madeline stiffened, her face paling as recognition flickered in her eyes. Still, she forced herself to speak. "Sir, I was following protocol. He was in a restricted area without proper clearance." "Proper clearance?" Thomas cut her off, pulling a crisp folder from his coat. "You mean this clearance?" He tossed it on the table, the FAA seal glaring in gold. "Signed and approved. My son, Marcus Reynolds, is part of our elite Horizon Aviation Youth Program. I co-founded it. You just violated every regulation in that handbook with your behavior." Gasps rippled through the stunned room. Thomas's voice dropped lower, dangerous now. "You humiliated my son, questioned his integrity, insulted my family. And worse, you did it all because of the color of his skin." His eyes locked on hers, and for the first time, Madeline took an unconscious step back. "I will personally report this incident to the FAA Ethics Committee," Thomas continued. "Expect a full investigation. He pointed at the security officers. "Stand down immediately. If you touch my son again, I'll have your badges." Both men quickly lowered their hands, their faces drained of color. Thomas turned to Marcus, his voice softening. "I'm here, son. You're safe now." Marcus couldn't hold back anymore. Tears streamed down his face as he choked out, "Dad, I was so scared." "I know," Thomas murmured, wrapping his arms around him protectively. "But no one gets to treat you like this." The room fell utterly silent, the weight of what had just happened settling on every witness. No one dared meet Thomas's glare. Finally, Thomas addressed everyone. "Let this be a lesson. The next time you judge someone based on your own prejudice, remember this moment. You almost destroyed a young man's future." With that, he guided Marcus out of the break room, leaving Madeline and the others frozen, shame burning in their faces. For the first time, Marcus felt truly seen, and finally truly safe. The last remnants of Captain Whitman's false confidence. The entire room held its breath, waiting for her response. But Whitman had none. Her mouth opened and closed as if grasping for words that simply weren't there. Beads of sweat formed on her forehead as she realized there was no justification, no defense she could offer that would stand against the truth David Jackson had laid bare. David took a slow step forward, his towering presence impossible to ignore. "Your prejudice led you to profile a bright young black student, not because he posed any real threat, but because of your own narrow-minded assumptions. That is unacceptable. In my capacity as FAA administrator, I promise you there will be consequences." The murmurs in the room grew louder. Some of the pilots and staff, who had earlier stood silently complicit, now shifted uncomfortably, realizing the severity of the situation they'd just witnessed. A few cast apologetic glances toward Elijah, while others kept their heads low, ashamed to meet David Jackson's hard stare. David turned back to the security officers, his voice unwavering. "You two? Did you even verify the ID? Did you check with the program director? Or did you simply follow her orders without question?" One of the officers cleared his throat nervously. We were going to verify, sir, but we were instructed to remove him immediately." "That's what I thought," David snapped. "From this moment forward, anyone interfering with my son's participation in this program answers directly to me and the FAA." Finally, David turned back to Elijah, his voice softening. "Son, you did nothing wrong. You held your ground when the world tried to tear you down. I'm proud of you." Elijah's throat tightened with emotion, but this time it wasn't from fear. It was from the overwhelming pride and relief washing over him. "Thank you, Dad. I knew you'd come." David nodded before shifting his cold gaze back to Whitman. "You'll hear from the FAA's disciplinary board soon. I suggest you prepare your defense, if you have one." With that, David placed a firm hand on Elijah's back and guided him out of the pilot's lounge. The crowd parted silently, respect radiating from every corner. And for the first time all day, Elijah walked tall, his father's promise and the truth clearing the sky above him once more. Tolerate discrimination or abuse of power within the aviation industry. Our mission is to ensure the safety and dignity of every individual, regardless of their background, race, or appearance. What happened here today is a clear violation of those principles. His words echoed through the break room like a final verdict, heavy and undeniable. Every person present felt the weight of his message settle into their bones, leaving no room for argument. Even the security officers, who had once followed Whitman's orders without question, now stood stiffly, ashamed of their part in this ordeal. David Jackson turned his attention back to Elijah, his voice softening. "Son, you've endured more than anyone should, especially on a day meant to celebrate your hard work and dreams. But you stood tall. You didn't let their judgment break you. That is the mark of a true aviator, courage under pressure." Elijah's chest swelled with pride and emotion. For the first time since this nightmare began, he smiled, not out of relief but from the strength his father's words gave him. "Thank you, Dad. I won't ever forget this moment." David nodded and turned back toward the room, his eyes sweeping over the crowd. "This should serve as a reminder to all of you. Prejudice blinds you, and in aviation, blindness is deadly. Never again will a child or anyone be humiliated like this in my presence. Horizon Airlines will receive a full report from the FAA. There will be accountability." The room was silent. Whitman's shoulders slumped in defeat, fully realizing that her career, built over 2 decades, was likely over. Not because of a single mistake, but because her prejudice had finally been exposed in the worst way possible. David placed a protective hand on Elijah's back, guiding him toward the door. "Let's go, son. You've earned your place here more than anyone." As they left, heads bowed in respect. Elijah walked taller, his heart lighter. Justice had been served, not just for him, but for every kid who ever dared to dream, with tears brimming in his eyes. But this time they were tears of pride and gratitude. "Thank you, Dad," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I'll remember that. I promise." David Jackson smiled softly, the stern lines of his face easing as he looked at his son, the boy who had stood tall in the face of cruelty and injustice. "Come on, son," he said, placing a steady hand on Elijah's back. "Let's go home. There's nothing more to prove here. You've already won." With that, the two of them turned away from the crowd, father and son, side by side, leaving behind the pilot's lounge that had once felt so hostile, but now stood as a silent testament to the power of truth and integrity. The onlookers remained silent, watching as the pair walked away. Some felt shame, others reflected on the injustice they had just witnessed, but no one could deny the unshakable strength and dignity the young black teenager and his father had displayed. In their hearts, they knew this was a story that would not be forgotten, a powerful lesson about judgment, prejudice, and what it truly means to stand up for what is right. As they walked through the airport terminal, Elijah lifted his head high, his shoulders back, finally feeling the weight of the world lift from his chest. He knew now that his dreams were still intact, that no one could take away his passion for aviation or the future he had fought so hard for. Most importantly, he knew he had his father, his greatest protector and role model, walking beside him every step of the way. The sun was beginning to set beyond the massive glass windows of the terminal, casting a golden glow over the runway. Elijah paused, watching a large commercial jet lift gracefully into the sky. For the first time all day, he smiled, a genuine, hopeful smile. One day, he thought, that'll be me up there, soaring high, free of anyone's doubts or prejudice. Because today he hadn't just defended his dream. He'd learned that the sky truly has no limits. Elijah Jackson's story did not end with justice being served that day in the pilot's lounge. Instead, it was just the beginning of something far greater. His experience became a defining moment not just for him, but for thousands of young dreamers across the country. As a result of his ordeal and the swift, decisive actions of his father, David Jackson, the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, took major steps to ensure that such injustice would never happen again. Elijah was soon invited to numerous schools, aviation workshops, and community events to share his story. He stood before auditoriums filled with eager students, future pilots, engineers, and aviation enthusiasts, all of whom saw in him a reflection of their own struggles, hopes, and ambitions. He no longer hesitated or felt the self-doubt that once plagued him. Instead, he stood strong, his voice confident and unwavering, recounting his journey from humiliation and despair to the moment when justice was firmly upheld. He spoke about the pain of being subjected to prejudice, the loneliness of standing against false accusations, and the fear that his lifelong dream of becoming a pilot might be stolen from him simply because of his skin color. But more importantly, he shared the triumph of truth and justice, emphasizing that courage, resilience, and integrity would always prevail in the face of discrimination, but only if one is brave enough to stand up for what is right. Through every speech, Elijah realized that he was no longer just telling his own story. His experience had become a symbol, a rallying cry for young people who feared that their background, race, or social status might limit their potential. He inspired them to believe that no one had the right to tell them where they did or didn't belong. And at the end of each speech, he always left them with the same powerful message. Never forget this: aviation, like every other profession, needs people like you. Diversity is strength, and every dream deserves protection. I stand here today to prove that the future is always open to those who are brave enough to step forward and fight for what they believe in. His heartfelt words were always met with enthusiastic applause, tearful moments of emotion, and newfound determination in the eyes of those listening. Elijah's story no longer belonged to just him. It belonged to everyone who had ever faced doubt, discrimination, or injustice but still dared to dream. As for Captain Rebecca Whitman, she could not escape the consequences of her actions. After a thorough and transparent investigation by the FAA, it was found that her incident with Elijah was not an isolated case. Multiple past complaints against her revealed a pattern of racial bias, misconduct, and abuse of authority. She was immediately suspended from her position and stripped of her ability to operate flights. In the aviation industry, where safety and professionalism are paramount, there was no place for someone who allowed personal prejudice to dictate their decisions. Though the punishment was severe, it was necessary, not just for Elijah, but for the entire industry. This landmark decision that sent a powerful message. No one is above accountability. No one has the right to abuse their power to harm others based on personal bias. And no one, no matter their rank or years of service, can act unjustly and expect to go unchallenged. David Jackson made sure this case didn't just end as a single event. Instead, it became a catalyst for real change. The FAA implemented strict new policies aimed at preventing racial discrimination and ensuring that bias had no place in aviation. Airlines across the country reviewed their diversity training, security protocols, and hiring practices to eliminate prejudice at every level. Through Elijah's painful yet transformative experience, the industry as a whole recognized that prejudice wasn't just dangerous, it was a liability. And as the world changed, so did the standards that govern aviation, ensuring that no aspiring pilot, engineer, or aviation enthusiast would ever face what Elijah had endured that day. For Elijah, the incident was no longer just a personal battle. It had become a mission. Every step forward in his life was no longer just for himself, but for every young person who feared that they too might be denied an opportunity because of who they were. With the support of his father, the FAA, and many within the aviation industry, Elijah became a youth ambassador for diversity and inclusion in aviation. His story was featured in national media, and he was asked to speak at aviation summits, leadership conferences, and educational institutions. Scholarships were created in his name, dedicated to helping underprivileged students enter the world of aviation, and he never stopped working toward his own dream. Every hour he spent in a flight simulator, every test he aced, and every skill he mastered brought him closer to the skies he had always dreamed of flying. One day, as he stood on the tarmac watching a Boeing 787 take off into the endless blue sky, he felt a profound sense of peace. The same airport where he had once been humiliated was now the place where his dreams were flourishing. Elijah knew his journey was only beginning, but he also understood that his struggle had opened doors, not just for him, but for an entire generation of young dreamers. And watching from a distance, David Jackson smiled with pride. His fight for justice had not just saved his son's future. It had ignited a movement that would reshape aviation forever. Through Elijah Jackson's emotional and dramatic journey, we have witnessed the devastating impact of prejudice. But more importantly, we have seen the tremendous strength of justice when it is upheld with courage and determination. No one deserves to have their dreams stolen because of their skin color, social status, or background. The story of Elijah Jackson teaches us a powerful and timeless lesson, that prejudice and injustice can strike even the most innocent of dreams, but with courage, integrity, and the unwavering support of those who believe in us, truth will always rise above the darkness. Elijah's journey reminds us that no matter how far society advances, the hidden grip of bias and discrimination can still surface in the very places we believe to be the most professional and fair. It was not Elijah's abilities or his dreams that were questioned that day, but the color of his skin and the assumptions placed upon him by someone blinded by prejudice. Yet what could have become a story of defeat and humiliation turned into a defining moment, not just for Elijah, but for everyone who witnessed it. Thanks to his father's strength, the weight of the law, and the values of justice upheld by the Federal Aviation Administration, Elijah's dignity was restored. More than that, it sent a clear message to everyone. Power and position do not place anyone above accountability, and prejudice has no place in any industry, especially one responsible for the safety and dreams of so many. This story also shows us that our greatest challenges often become our greatest teachers. Elijah could have given up. He could have let that moment of discrimination crush his spirit, but instead, he stood tall, learned from it, and used it as fuel to inspire others. He became a beacon of hope for countless young people who have ever doubted themselves because of where they come from, how they look, or the barriers society placed in front of them. His story teaches us that it's not enough to just dream. We must also protect those dreams fiercely, especially in the face of injustice. And it's not just about fighting for ourselves, but creating a path where those who come after us will never have to face the same battles. For all of us, parents, grandparents, professionals, and community members, this story is a reminder of our responsibility to stand up against injustice wherever it appears, to raise our children and grandchildren to believe in their worth, and to ensure that no one ever feels small or powerless because of bias or discrimination. It reminds us that true strength is not in how loudly we speak, but in how boldly we stand for what is right, even when the world tries to silence us. And most importantly, it shows that when justice is done, it not only rights a wrong, but inspires change, opening doors for generations to come. Because in the end, what truly matters is the legacy we leave, one of fairness, dignity, and hope for every dreamer daring to chase the sky.